Yo, 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 what is going on, you guys? It's the Sticky Buttons podcast. This is your host, Brandon.
And this is Blake.
And we're coming at you with another episode, a brand new episode 67. And,
67's got a great ring to it, man. I love the 6, love the 7s. I think it's going to be a great one, dude.
I definitely think so, too. I think we're going to just kick it off and give a big thanks to our Patreon supporters. Anyone who supported us on Patreon, we really appreciate it. Blake, do you want to let our supporters know what you used the money for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess really quick, Brandon and I, we've had a Patreon for a while. So seriously, thank you to everyone that supported us there. We haven't used any of the money yet, but we recently made the decision that we each wanted something. And we're each going to talk about that a little bit today. So I personally used the part of my half, I suppose. I used that to go towards a Steam Deck. So maybe we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. So thank you to everyone. I used the portion from the Patreon. My grandma gave me some money for Christmas, so thanks, Grandma. And then I chipped in some of my own money to get this. So it's a bit of an expensive device, but, everyone pulling together, I suppose. Between me, the Patreon, and my grandma, we got it covered,
We got it covered, man. And I can't wait for you to really get into what you got, man. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. What'd you use yours for, man?
So I used mine for a Nintendo Switch OLED.
Nice.
I wanted to get that bigger screen.
Nice. And you kind of shared one with your family, right? So this is kind of like this is yours now.
Yeah, we used that Switch for a while, and it's the family Switch. But now this is my personal Switch for me to explore a lot of different indie titles and kind of just, play on my monitor. I'm excited to...
You know that song, Two Phones? You got 2 Switches, bro.
I got 2 Switches. That's hilarious, man. Yeah, but one is a Switch OLED and one is a regular Switch. And nice. I do like the bigger screen a lot. It definitely was a great help to receive that Patreon support, man, because that was an expensive console. And the Patreon was only, I think about half. So... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we can, just for all of our patrons, we'll make a post on Patreon as well, just saying thank you. But I guess just really quick, I think we each made roughly around $200, and we invested that back into the show. So we really just wanted to say thank you to everyone for supporting us, this whole time. It is expensive to make the show. I think at some point we'd love to get to the point where it could cover our editing cost. But, quite frankly, we're just nowhere close to that. So, with the money that we had, we decided instead of spending it on editing, we were just going to continue to fund that out of our pockets and make an investment in some hardware so we could continue to talk about some cool games. So, thank you sincerely to everyone that supported us on Patreon. And if you'd like to support us on Patreon for as little as $1, you can do that via the link in the show notes. And we've got a couple episodes there, like a backlog of episodes. We talk about the show Loki, talk about some other stuff. We're not really too sure how we want to handle this in the future, but we've got a lot of ideas and we're thinking about it. So, genuinely thank you. And I think with that out of the way, Brandon, I think we can get into it.
Let's get right into episode 67.
So do you have any games you want to talk about right off the bat?
I haven't really had too much time to play many games, so I'm just going to talk about good old 2K. I'm playing a lot of NBA 2K23.
How's that going, man?
Been in the theater a lot. The theater is kind of like a indoor court where you get to match make quickly as opposed to having to wait at the park for a court. You can just start up a match and automatically get loaded with teammates and opponents. And they have a couple different events. It's usually 4 different events. So right now, there's the 1v1 event where you just play good old 1v1.
1v1, nice.
There are 2v2s with a little twist. So if you get a steal or a block, or if you get a defensive rebound, meaning the other team shot the ball and you got the rebound, you get a point. So it's like a kind of like a fast-paced 2v2. And then there's a 3v3 with no squads, meaning you can't play with any friends. It's just a 3v3 with all random people.
Oh, nice. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, and it adds a different layer to the game because a lot of people like to play with their friends and teammates, and they have all these strategies and game plans. So it's nice to see, what people kind of play like when you don't have that, right? Like a random pickup game of basketball. And then,
yeah, that's nice, man. That's like the gulag, but with
yeah,
2K.
Seriously. And then the last one right now is the Mountain Dew court.
I'm sorry, did you say the Mountain Dew court?
There's a Mountain Dew court where there are charged zones on the court. So there's an area on the court that's blinking red. And if you score on that area on the court, you get
a free Mountain Dew?
+1. A Mountain Dew drops on your head. But yeah,
oh, damn, man. What is it with gamers and Mountain Dew, man? Why did...
Marketing.
Oh, man.
They want you to drink Mountain Dew and Doritos. That's what the gamers eat.
That's what they want. I guess, dude. I guess I better open up my cabinet, get my Mountain Dew and Doritos for dinner.
Yeah, put away the carrots and the kale. Let's take out some Mountain Dew and some good old Doritos.
Yeah, Swiss chard, never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
So I got something to say while we're talking about basketball. I went and saw a Brooklyn Nets game this past week.
Who'd you see them play?
Yeah. They saw the Detroit Pistons, and they got squashed by the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, man. Who did you see, Kyrie or the Durantula?
Yeah. Irving, he did really well. So I think he got the most points during the game. But yeah, he did really well. It was really interesting, man. I haven't been to one. And I mean, the stadium was full. I got tickets through my office or through my job. So that was fun to go out with some folks from work. But man, it was really interesting, man. And something kept happening during this game, but I had no idea this happened. I didn't even know what this was. So I'm going to ask you what this is. Maybe you can, I guess, inform me. I don't really know what the word is. It's like a flagrant foul? Am I saying that right?
A flagrant foul? Dude, really? A flagrant foul kept happening? That's insane.
They got at least two or three happened. It was crazy. I don't really know what it means, but they kept they were like, this foul on the play is under review, or the foul on the court is under review. And it was crazy because then they had like a bunch of bouncers cleared the field, and these people in suits, and the refs, they went to this table and watched the replay on the monitor. And then the guy got on the mic and was like, it was kind of goofy the way the ref was talking about it. But he got on the mic and was like, after review, the foul on the court has been upgraded to a flagrant foul. But is it flagrant? Is that the word?
Flagrant is the word. And I'm surprised because flagrant fouls are kind of, sometimes, just to give you context, when I'm playing in the theater and someone keeps reaching, they keep reaching on me. And I tell them, I'm like, if you keep reaching on me, I'm going to flagrantly foul you. Right? And a flagrant foul is a penalty where, there's unnecessary and excessive contact committed by a player against an opponent. And, that contact can actually injure the opponent.
Oh, wow.
So that's why it gets escalated to flagrant. Sometimes a regular foul might get escalated to a flagrant. Say, if you're dunking the ball and you, slam it, necessarily, really hard on somebody and, slam your elbow into their head after, you make it a point to, when you reach, really smack their wrist, really hard.
Oh, man.
Flagrant fouls. It's interesting. Intentional. Think of, anything that's intentional.
Okay. I found the data, actually, from ESPN. On this game, it looks like the Pistons got charged with 2 flagrant fouls, and the Nets got 1.
Dude, that's so interesting.
So there was 3 flagrant fouls in the game.
That rarely happens, but I could see why a player like Kyrie would be in a game with a lot of flagrant fouls. He's very controversial right now within that association.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he played really well. I guess I don't really... Why is that?
Just because of a lot of the comments he made last year, and also, he's just a lot of politics I don't really want to get into on the podcast. But just a lot of people, a lot of his colleagues don't really like him that much. They might want to excessively foul him and his teammates and just make it a point. And it's also interesting, too, because the Pistons are known historically for being a defensive team. Back in the day, they were called the bad boys. They just would get on the court and stir up trouble. Charles Barkley, and it's interesting to see that kind of repeat itself. They're over here kind of getting all these flagrant fouls, and I guess they were playing really good defense, I'm sure.
I mean, hey, they won. They beat the Nets. It was a big upset. I guess the Brooklyn Nets are really supposed to win by quite a lot.
Yeah, I bet the Nets. I bet the Nets. I was upset, but I'm biased too, so.
You bet the Nets.
I'm biased too, so.
Oh, that's
I'm
funny.
a Nets fan.
You know, let me ask you this, because I thought it was a really high-scoring game. The Detroit Pistons had 130 points, and the Nets had 122. Mm-hmm. Is that a high-scoring game?
Yeah, no.
For an NBA
You're
game?
right. That's a high score.
Because I thought they normally break 100, but it's like, don't they normally like barely break 100?
Sometimes games, like, it would be normal for a score of a game to be like 86, 90, 76, 80. Like, that wouldn't be unheard of. It really just depends on the tempo, right? On the momentum that's being built. Basketball is a momentum sport. And so if the score was that high, that means you, as a viewer, were having a really good time, right? You were seeing a lot of momentum. You're seeing a lot of back and forth. Like, the score got all the way up to where it did. You know, that's really impressive. That must have been a really exciting game to watch, man.
It was cool to be there. It was really cool just because the stadium was packed. Like, the nosebleeds were filled. The whole stadium was filled. So
people wanted to see that. That's one hell of a game.
Yeah, it really was.
Nets Pistons.
But the Nets Pistons. All right, man. Well, it's kind of funny. Just really quick, Michigan and New York button heads. Kind of like this pod.
It's funny, yeah.
All right, man. I have a quick update on a game for you that we've talked about before. It's been a while since we talked about it, but they made an update a couple months ago, and we just haven't had time to bring it to the pod. But I've been playing around with it, and I just really wanted to talk about it. So we've talked about No Man's Sky on the pod before. We've both played it. Can you just refresh my memory? Do you like this game? What was your experience with No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky was a really kind of visceral survival game, as far as, like, you're just put into this world and you kind of just need to figure out how to navigate it, which I have no issues doing. I don't know, I didn't necessarily have like a pull to the game, a strong pull to the game to like keep bringing me back. But that's probably because I just didn't spend enough time with it initially. I feel like it's a game that you need to maybe sit down and play for like an hour or two and kind of just really get the hang of the mechanics and the world.
Absolutely.
It's not a game you can just like get on for a 30-minute, 15-minute session and expect to like really, get a rewarding play session through that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's one of those games where, I mean, you really like for me personally, I'll get on and hours will just go by. And I mean, like, you start with nothing. And I think what it's really praised for is it's a survival game that you can just jump in a ship and just, hit the acceleration and you can go out of the atmosphere and you're in space. And then you can travel to the next planet. Or if you can see a space station from the planet you're on, you can just get there and fly there. And that's kind of, I guess, the big selling point of No Man's Sky and why so many people like it. It's like truly like an open universe, like open world game. But they kind of said that not that they're done working on it, but they put out a huge update and they were kind of implying that it was one of the last and that they're kind of winding down work on this game. And I guess there was a lot of controversy when this game came out. It wasn't exactly what was promised. But since then, they've just been updating it year after year, and it's just become this incredible gaming experience. And on the last update, they did a couple things. So they've made a lot of updates, but this one is in particular, I guess it's noteworthy just because of what they changed. And they changed, whereas before they've added a lot of things. They've added water physics, or they've added more planets, they've added multiplayer, like the true multiplayer, and they've added mechs, or they've added like bikes that you can, or like hover bikes, or like more cars that you can, or like dune buggies that you can summon. And they've just added and added and added over the years. But what they've done this time is they added the ability to change the settings to make the game easier. So for example, you can now change a setting in a game to where you don't have to worry about jet fuel anymore. Or, if you want to build something, you don't even have to have the materials. you can just build it. Or if you want to have unlimited money, you can't have unlimited money, but you can make everything that you sell worth more, like max, and everything that you can buy is super cheap.
I see.
And they basically just made it incredible. I mean, like, truthfully, like, I'll get in, I think my save file is around 20 hours. And, like, if I spend a couple hours, like, I've maybe moved the needle a little bit. But now it's like it doesn't even matter. Not that it doesn't matter, but it just makes it a lot easier, a lot more accessible to where if I was going to do something, I could hop in and just do it. Instead of like, oh, I got to, farm the resources, make sure I have this and that. And then, I'm running low on jet fuel. I got to sidetrack, get more jet fuel. You know what I mean? Like now you can just, I want to build this sick base on this planet. I can just build it.
Right. That's really interesting. I'm glad that they did that now because it'll make the game a lot easier to interface with, and that initial learning curve that much less steep. So it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really cool that they did that, and it's not just like the learning curve. Like it's like end game resources as well. You know what I mean? Like now, like you can truly just like jump in, and if you're like, oh, I don't really know if I like this aspect, like I'll just turn that off.
Right. And
they really made it like very customizable to your experience. For me personally, I went in and I turned off the jet fuel because it's one of those things where it's like it's a very abundant resource in this universe, but you have to fill your slots with it. You have to keep, a bunch of jet fuel in your slots to be able to leave. Like that's one of the coolest parts about it is you can just hop in your spaceship. And it really kind of got to the point where I was like, man, like I'm going to hop in my spaceship, walk over here because I don't want to fly over here. It'd be more fun to fly, but like I don't have as much jet fuel. Like I need to save the jet fuel. I need to save my launcher fuel. And now I can just I don't have to worry about any of that. And another thing, they made everybody's backpacks bigger. So just base everybody's backpack is bigger. And that's something that was, I truly spent the last 2 play sessions, I was like, I'm just going to expand my inventory slots. And I would grind it out an hour plus trying to do that. And now it's just bigger. And they made a settings where you can add, in your inventory, they can just hold infinite, or not infinite, but near infinite resources instead of only being able to hold 250. So they really made it a lot better. A lot more accessible. So if you've ever you've been oh, I'm not sure if I want to jump into No Man's Sky just because I don't want to spend I want to experience the world, I don't want to grind. They basically if you don't want to grind, you can turn off the grind. You know what I mean? Or if it's you got into it, you're oh, I really like this part of it. Maybe I do actually want to resource manage a little bit more. You can turn it back on and then you can grind.
It's like mods in Minecraft.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I thought that was really cool, really special, and I thought that was of note. So I wanted to bring that to the show, especially as we talked about it. If you picked it up and thought it was too intimidating, you can just turn off that stuff. You can give yourself more health. You can make it so there's no consequence to dying and things like that. They really made it so you can tailor make your own experience, which is really awesome.
Yeah, you got to get back on there. I actually have the disc version of that, so I have to update that. Yeah,
me too. Now that it's happened, let me ask you this. Is there a game that you would like to be able to customize your experience a little bit more in? Is there a game that you wish got this treatment?
That's a good question. What game comes to mind? I would say Returnal. Returnal would be a great game to do that for.
Yeah.
Just given the type of world and all the different types of spaces that generate, you have a different experience every single time. I think having those quality of life improvements will allow me to experience more of that and see more of the world and interact with it
absolutely.
in a different way.
Yeah. It would have been cool if I could just turn on infinite health and then just not worry about dying and just continue on and play the whole game. That would have been cool. Or maybe you have 4 times as much health or something. That would have been cool, I thought.
Unlimited dashing.
Yeah, that would have been cool too, or something like that. I think that for me, Elden Ring kind of comes to mind. I think that I just wish I could just go back and just change my respec. I wish I could just go in the menu and just reset everything. Or I wish I could maybe give myself a little bit more health, give myself a buff so I didn't have to grind for runes as much.
The grind is part of it. It's a part of the design for a lot of games. And it like kind of inherently changes the nature of the game, which I wanted to ask you that question, but I feel like we've covered that.
Yeah, that is not untrue for No Man's Sky. It does kind of change. It changes the design of the game because now I don't have to, there's a whole part of like jet fuel. I'm not even collecting it anymore. It's a whole part of the game that's built into it. It's built into the design, and I just ignore it now. But the thing is because I chose to do that, I feel like I liked it a lot more. So, and I guess like if let's say Elden Ring had this, I guess these accessibility settings, if they had that in it, you may not have turned them off or turned them on, but I might have. And I may have, who knows, if I could have turned that off, gave myself a little bit more health, maybe I would have seen it through and maybe it would have been my game of the year. I think that, we pay money for games. I think we should be able to change the settings if we want.
I agree.
That's my personal take.
I think about a conversation we had earlier on another pod episode where I think you asked me about a paradox, or maybe it was a phenomenon where if you change one element of something or of a design, does that fundamentally change the design? You familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I do remember, I was having a similar conversation. I'm not sure when and where that was, but...
Can you remember that concept or that, like... Because I'm trying to think about it.
Was it the ship of Theseus?
Yes. There it is. There it is. That's what comes to mind when you talk about No Man's Sky and changing, like, that fundamental aspect of the game, or even Elden Ring, right? Because that's, like, part of Elden Ring, or No Man's Sky is that ground.
Yeah. But here, let me say this, though, because think of all the code and all of the art and everything in Elden Ring, right? Think of everything that game is, and all, like, from Limgrave to the other areas. The health that you have is just such a small part of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've kind of been swayed. I think at the time, maybe when we did that Ship of Theseus, that, I thought that, maybe if you change that, maybe it's a different experience. And I think it is a different experience, but now that I've experienced, being able to change these settings, I still think it is that game. You just have a different experience. And, it's funny because you and me, when we jump into Elden Ring, you had a totally different experience than I did anyways. So that would just be one more difference between the two of our play styles.
Yeah.
Or our play experiences. So...
Elden Ring was one of those titles where I feel like everyone had a different kind of, like, experience with it. And it's really interesting how that played out. I feel like that's what the designers kind of had in mind when they made that game. Like, they didn't want one given route or given playthrough necessarily, which is really interesting.
Yeah. No Man's Sky is actually, I think, a really good comparison because every world is procedurally generated. So, like, your worlds are going to be totally different than the worlds I encounter. So in some ways, it is actually a very good analog or a parallel to Elden Ring and difficulty there.
Would you say that's a trend that you're seeing more in games now because, we just have the technology to do so, or is it because we want to stimulate the consumer?
Wait, the procedurally generated or accessibility?
Yeah, like just changing kind of...
Yeah. Actually, there's an indie game that I've heard about. I think it's called Paradise Marsh. And I think they have procedurally... It is on Switch.
That sounds familiar.
And I think they have procedurally generated music.
Oh.
So the idea is that everybody gets something different.
That's actually really interesting.
Which is kind of cool. I think that it's kind of just that where we're at, where we can create... It's just a way to create variance. I'm not necessarily sure... It's like a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I think procedural generation is different than AI generation. And I think that with procedural, you give it different building blocks and it kind of randomizes the building blocks.
Yeah.
And I guess AI is kind of similar, but it has a different connotation to it. I think we touched on this a little bit briefly in our last episode that we did, but I don't think that AI, like AI generated like art or anything, I don't necessarily think that we should go down that rabbit hole. I think it's kind of not a waste of time, but maybe not necessarily a good use of our resources or time. What do you think? I know you're more of an AI.
I was just using AI this past week, bro. I had to come up with a meal prep. I'm coming up with a meal prep plan, and I'm talking to ChatGPT, and I asked the AI, like, hey, can you recommend some meals? And it was able to randomize a bunch of different meals that I'm actually going to use as far as like grocery shopping.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting, man. I think we're really going to have to maybe table this topic for another time. We can do some more research and talk about it. Maybe we can devote a whole episode to it.
Yeah, figure out ways to use AI for the podcast.
Nah, I don't know. Would you want your voice to be AI, man?
No, I want my voice to be AI, but maybe we could have the AI generate episodes, like episode ideas, or generate content, like come up with like, I don't know, the AI is really smart. And I feel like humans paired with AI, that's a whole nother level.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's kind of just a way to maybe sort randomization.
Yeah, it just helps us think. I think it's a way to help us organize our thoughts, at least for me personally. That's why I love working with AI. It's just like I think about optimization. AI, that's literally what the AI is built on.
Yeah, I guess we could, damn, I don't have nothing to say.
Let's table the AI topic for now. We can bring it back.
But I guess on the reverse of that, like, I have seen a trend where accessibility settings, I've seen it more and more. And I don't know if it's just because I've been playing more and more games, but I think what it is, if I had to guess, I would have to say that there are just because there are so many games out there and so many games are vying for your time, it's an easy thing to be like, oh, this person wants to customize their experience. Sure, let them do it. This person doesn't. They don't have to. So I think it's becoming, at least for me, my time is already more of a commodity than the money that I would spend on video games. That makes sense. Like I do have, more money than time. So I think that if a game can meet me, give me a little bit, make it easier for me to play, I'm more likely to do so.
Ooh, that's a gem. You just dropped a gem right now on the pod.
All right, man. Well, do you want to move on? Move on to our next topic?
Yeah, let's move on, man. Damn. All right, damn. We need more people listening to Sticky Buns podcast, man, because that was just a real gem right there, dude.
I appreciate it, man. But let's move on to what we use with our Patreon money. Would you mind just telling me about the OLED and if you think it's worth getting the OLED screen? Like, I've thought about it, maybe upgrading, but just walk us through. You've had it for about a month now, right? Maybe like, what are your thoughts on the OLED Switch versus the original Switch? I'm
enjoying this OLED Switch specifically because I got the bundle, the Pokemon
Scarlet and Violet.
See, I don't even play it anymore. The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet bundle. And it's nice. The art on it is really cool.
The art is super
really nice when I'm playing on that Switch. The screen is noticeably bigger, when I'm playing Pokemon, when I'm playing Eastward.
Have you played Eastward on the OLED Switch?
Yeah, actually, the other day my little sister was playing on the old Switch too. Her and her friend were playing. They were really enjoying it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah, they were like, why is this game so good? And I was like, it's an indie game. It means like people who are really passionate about games put their time and love into it. That's why it's so good.
I think it took close to a decade in development for Eastward. Man, I love that game, dude. I still haven't finished it, but oh my gosh. It's such a good game.
Shout out to Eastward.
Yeah.
Indie games, man.
I feel like that one would look specifically or particularly good on the OLED. I feel like that one would look amazing.
It does. I run it on the OLED and it looks really amazing, especially when I pop it up on the monitor. I like the dock a lot too. The dock is very, modern.
Is it white?
Yeah, it's white and it has these I would pull it over to show you, but it's kind of attached. It has the quality of life improvements as far as the flap on the back. Kind of clicks on a little more and holds the wires better than the old one.
Oh, that's nice.
And yeah, I think when I say it's worth it, if your old Switch is really at the end of its life cycle, I would say it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it to go ahead and put down your fairly new Switch that still works great and pick up another one just for
the better screen,
environmental purposes, right? Because you keep buying a bunch of these things. They have lithium-ion batteries on them. Those are really hard to dispose of.
Yeah.
So there's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely, man. How would you feel if next month they made a new Switch, like a Switch that had better hardware, better processor? How would you... I mean, we don't know if that's going to happen, but how would you feel if it did now that you got this?
You know, I would think that's great, because then that would mean that Nintendo is looking to maybe put out some titles that might be a bit more taxing on these devices. I would hope that that's what the incentive would be, but I wouldn't really feel any type of ways. It's like I said, I'm gonna use this Switch till the wheels fall off.
Yeah,
that's kind of just my personal philosophy with technology, though.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, I feel like for my Switch, like it's definitely showing its age, but I mean the screen seems fine, but it's just the ability to run games, and I kind of had this point that I got to where I was like, if an indie game comes to any other platform, I think I'm going to get it on the other platform. With this PlayStation, like there's a couple times where I'm like, man, I wish, this indie game, I wish this was on the PlayStation. And, I guess that's a good transition into the Steam Deck. But I got a Steam Deck, basically, so I could play more of those games. So let me ask you this, Brandon. Do you know what a Steam Deck is? If you were like, oh, like what's a Steam Deck?
A Steam Deck is equivalent. Valve is a company that distributes titles on computers, on just like regular PC. Mm-hmm. It's Valve's version of the Switch. That's kind of how I would put it.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty...
They're able to put all their licensed games on this Switch-like machine and cater to those types of consumers.
Yeah, that's a pretty good definition of it. I will amend it a little bit. So the Steam Deck, it's a Linux PC.
I love Linux.
So it's a Linux PC, and it basically has a built-in screen and a built-in controller, is what I would say. It looks like a Switch. I mean, the sides do not come off, the controller. It's built into it. And the Valve's actually, they're the company that makes it. They've been really ahead of the curve, ahead of, all their competitors on right to repair. And if, like, let's say your joystick's busted, your bumper's busted, you can go to their website and buy a replacement. I mean, obviously you have to know how to put it back together, but it is really cool that you have that. But like I said, it's a Linux PC, so it has an operating system that's it's called Steam OS, and it's very similar when you boot it up to the Switch. And you can see your, the games that you have installed in a nice little row. You can also go to their storefront and the Steam storefront and buy games there. And I spent about a week just doing that. Like just kind of just having it like kind of as like a Switch competitor, where I was just using the Steam Deck as that. And I've actually since then, I mean, it worked really well. I mean, some games like Portal worked right out of the box, which we haven't talked about the game Portal on the show, so maybe that's some foreshadowing. There's a couple other games, like I got Outer Worlds. That one worked. Some other indie games as well worked great. And honestly, it worked really well, and I was really impressed by it. I mean, I pretty much had no issues. There was one game where I had to remap my controls, and one game that didn't... Actually, it was Far Cry 3. I actually couldn't figure out how to work it. Like, the controls weren't set up. But there's this thing where you can download somebody else's button configurations. So I downloaded theirs, and then it was working, and then I made a couple modifications to it. And I did that in the settings, and it was really nice.
That's one of the reasons why I said I love Linux, and that's part of the reason why is Linux is open source software, meaning, they really give the user the freedom to cater their experience, and just the fact that, like, Valve is giving you the ability to download someone's button configuration and use that in the game. It just speaks to, kind of that kind of mentality of, like, open source and sharing.
Yeah. Honestly, it's really remarkable. And I do kind of want to get into some more of the nitty-gritty on it. And I do kind of want to talk about, like, the buttons, I guess the ergonomics. So I guess really quick, it's about twice the size of a Switch. Like, it is heavy. And I mean heavy. And it puts out a lot of heat because it's a computer. It puts out some heat. So you have to be careful when touching the back because it, like, truly, like, you could burn yourself. And
really? That's exciting. You burn yourself with your Steam.
You could. You really could, man. And there are people out there that are making mods for it to where you kind of like click there's like a fan, and it like clicks into the USB-C, and then you have like a fan. It's kind of like this fan battery pack, and it's like the size of one of those like external battery packs, but it's just like an extra fan, and it helps with like cooling and whatnot. Which I guess also worth mentioning, because it's a PC, I can go in and change my performance settings. Like I can change my frame rates, I can change my GPU, and I'm still a little bit new to that aspect of it. And I didn't do any of that the first week, but I'm starting to mess around with that a little bit. And I was able to, like with Jedi Fallen Order, a game that I love, I was able to boot it up, and I was like, this looks better than it did on my Xbox One. And then I changed some settings, and I was like, after I think I dropped the frame rate, made it like a 40 FPS max. I changed the GPU, and I changed something else that I don't remember. And after I did that, I was like, this may not look as good as it does on my PS5, but it is very, very close. And I just thought that was incredible, for something that you can hold in your hand. And I've been blown away by it. On the ergonomics, they do something else that's really cool, Brandon. So under the joysticks, I'll show you, Brandon, but for you listener, you can look up a picture. Under the joystick, they have a trackpad. Under each joystick, they have like a trackpad. Like if you had a laptop where your mouse is, like your mouse trackpad, they have one of those right under the controller. And I've got to say, man, if you map that to like your mouse and make it like a tap, a click of the mouse, it is so...
It clicks too. It has tactile feedback too. Like it can, from any corner.
So
it's like a mouse.
Sorry, you can't actually click. You have to like actually tap it.
Oh, you can. Okay.
So the trackpad doesn't actually have. Actually, it does. You can click in. It's not as clicky as like some of the buttons. Like here, I'll do a test really quick next to my mic. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
So that was a back paddle button, which is built in.
It sounds like a regular like trackpad,
But this right here is I'm tapping the trackpad. Can you hear that? You probably can't hear that.
No, it doesn't. But was it going? Is it going down when you click it? Like
it is going down, but it's not like actually clicking. But that's okay. I think it works. What I was gonna say is I can't believe how seamlessly that works. And like, just imagine, like, I think I might try some DS emulation. Like, imagine, like, there's a second screen that you have to tap. I guess it's also worth mentioning it's a touch screen, so I could just tap it. I could tap the screen. But there's a game that I'm playing. It's kind of like a board game, but it's like a video game version of a board game that I'm going to bring up probably in another episode. And I use the trackpad to like move the mouse in the game. It's a PC game, and you can move the mouse with this trackpad. And I just can't believe how seamlessly it just works, and it feels so good. And now that I have this, I'm like, man, like, I would never want to play a game without a trackpad again. And it's like right under the joysticks. Like, it just makes so much sense. And the ergonomics, it just feels incredible. I'm really blown away. And here, I'm gonna do a little click for you. These are the triggers.
Damn. Yeah, this sounds like some intense triggers.
They feel really good. So I'm just blown away by that. But I guess back to why I got it. There are so many indie games that come to Steam, and they come to PC, and they just don't come out on Switch. And, there's some games that we've played, and they didn't come out on Switch till years later. And Hyper Light Drifter is an example of that. Obviously by the time that we came around to it, it had been out on Switch for a couple years. But there was a couple year gap where it was only on PC, and it wasn't on any other platform. And there are so many other games that, are just on PC. And I'm really excited for that. I just kind of got to the point where I was realizing that about half the games that I was excited for weren't coming to a console platform. And that's kind of why I got it. That's one of the many reasons why I got it. And I guess on the console-like experience, you can have that with the Steam Deck, which I just thought was incredible. That it just kind of worked with SteamOS. And like, if that's what you wanted to do and that's the experience you wanted to have, you can pretty much have that. But here's the thing, Brandon. We've talked about this a little bit before on the pod. And it's kind of an interesting concept. So like, how when you boot up the PlayStation, you can only buy stuff from the PlayStation store? You can't buy stuff from the Xbox store? Or if you boot up your Switch, you can only buy stuff from the Nintendo Switch store. Or if you boot up your phone, you can only buy things from the Apple store. Right. That's called, as I've come to find out, that's called having it be a closed system. And where you can only buy things from the designated storefront. Now, the Steam, because it's a Linux PC, it has the operating system of SteamOS. And you can go to a desktop mode. So you can switch it to where it is truly a Linux PC. Mm-hmm. And what I was able to do is I was able to boot up the Epic launcher. And I have that as a non-Steam game. So if I click into my SteamOS and I click on the Epic Store launcher, it takes me to the Epic storefront. And the Epic storefront is, I guess, so they're a store. It's owned by Epic, which is the company that owns Fortnite. And they sometimes will give away free games. And there's an indie game that I wanted to check out called Sable. And over the holidays, they have that. They had a promo where you could get that game for free. So I got that game for free. I also got Death Stranding for free. Ooh. So I'm gonna try and boot that up on my Steam Deck as well. But it's all through this other store. So now I have access to 2 storefronts on this console. So like, let's say there's a game that's on sale on one of them. I can just get it on sale. It makes it a lot cheaper to where now I can kind of shop around. You know, there's also a storefront called itch.io that we've talked about. I haven't gotten that to work on the Steam Deck yet, but I'm working on it. And I'm also trying to get some emulators to work on this as well. So, and some of the emulators I'm trying to get to work are like Wii U. Like, I'm going to try and get a Wii U game to work on this after this call, which would be pretty cool.
Dude, I have a question. Mm-hmm. Can you see if League of Legends works on it? Can you run League of Legends?
I mean, it's a Linux PC, so does League of Legends run on Linux PC?
Yeah, probably.
If the answer is yes, then yeah. If there's a will, there's a way.
Anything runs on a Linux PC. You just need the computing power to run it. That's why people love Linux.
It is also playable on Steam Deck. Yeah.
And given that Linux is so open source, it's just so easy to, like, anyone can access it and know how to use it. It's the same thing with Python. That's one of the reasons why Python is so popular, is because it's so open source. Anyone can access it and understand it. And a lot of, like, code can just be transferred over languages.
Yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable what you can do. And switching to the desktop mode, like, I just plug in my mouse and keyboard and I have a PC. So it's really cool. I mean, I'm honestly kind of blown away with the capabilities that this thing has. And I really just wanted to talk about Valve's, I guess, their Steam platform, because I guess now that I'm part of this, I'm like, oh my god, like, this is incredible. I don't know why I ever wanted a PlayStation. I should have just built a PC, man. No, I'm starting to feel that way, but I wanted to talk about the Steam storefront really quick. So Valve recently, they broke a record, and I wanted to put that in context. So I guess Steam is the biggest gaming platform, the biggest gaming storefront that exists. And you'd think, like, oh, like, maybe Xbox or PlayStation or maybe the Switch, like, maybe Nintendo, you know, maybe they have the biggest platform. But it turns out it's Steam, because all it takes is a computer. And they recently broke a record. I was going to read this quote. This was on January 7th. Valve's game distribution platform, Steam, which is, I guess, the store we were just talking about, had a record-breaking weekend and exceeded 10 million concurrent players, or concurrent in-game players, for the first time, while also surpassing 32 million concurrent online users.
Jeez.
So that's in one weekend, and that was the weekend of January 7th. They had 10 million people playing games online, and 32 million people got online. And that's in a weekend.
No wonder there are certain governments that place limits on how much children can play. Think about how many people that is, dude. 10.
That's a lot of people.
Humans can't necessarily picture how big 10 million actually is.
I know, yeah. So I have this reference number. So as of January 4th, 2023, there have been 30 million PlayStation 5 sold. So in one weekend, there were more people online than there have been PlayStation 5 sold.
Wow.
It just goes to show, I guess, how big Steam really is. And you know, truthfully, man, like they really do have games on sale all the time. And since I knew I was going to get a Steam Deck, I started to track some of these sales. And like, I got Portal for $199. You could get it on your Switch as well, and it's for $19.99. So that's truly, I got that for 1% of what it cost you on the Switch. And there's this other game that I've really been enjoying on the Steam Deck that I wanted to shout out. It's also on other platforms as well. It's called The Art of Rally, and it's a really cool game. Basically, it's like a racing game, and it kind of walks you through the history of rally. And
North Carolina?
Rally. No. So like rap. If you weren't aware, rally is like a racing sport where you basically, it's like a long track, like long winding track through the wilderness, and it's scored based on time. So basically you have this like idyllic, picturesque maps, like racing maps from all over the world, and you just kind of race, and it's like third person. You know, I'm looking down at this like beautiful pastel watercolor landscape, driving the car. And I mean, it works great on the Steam Deck. I've sunk like 5 or 6 hours in this past week into this game. It's on everything. It's on Switch, it's on Xbox, but they had a sale on Steam and it was like $10 off. So, and things like that, I guess, happen all the time. Since I've been following, I mean, I've gotten some games for incredible deals. Like, I think I got Jedi Fallen Order for like $5, and I got Far Cry 3 for about $5 as well. So I just think that it's really incredible what you can do. And in my personal opinion, the reason that they're able to lower those prices because there were other storefronts that you could go to. And for example, there are some indie games that are only on itch.io, but they also, like, if there's an indie game on Steam and there's an indie game on itch.io, you'll probably be able to get it a little cheaper on itch.io because they don't charge as many fees for the user. So the person that posts it, or they don't charge as many fees for the person that uploads the game. That's the owner of the game. So they can lower their prices and make the same amount.
That's really interesting that they would allow you to still use their competitors' service on their platform.
Well, you know, man, the more I think about it, it makes a lot of sense that you should be able to access other platforms and other storefronts. And I just, now that I've kind of seen this, it's kind of opened my eyes to, you know, if you have an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Nintendo Switch, like, that storefront has a complete monopoly on that device. And like you said, man, those lithium-ion batteries, like, think about how much it takes to make a PlayStation 5 or a Switch. Like, it's a computer.
Yeah.
And
it's a PC.
For you, I mean, you're intentionally handicapping yourself, you know, by not being able to access other storefronts. And I didn't necessarily feel that way until I experienced otherwise. So, I don't know. It's very interesting. I think that we'll probably be talking a lot more about it in the future. But yeah, do you want me to talk about The Art of Rally anymore? That game's sick, man.
No, let's talk some more about The Art of Rally, because I was, when we were talking about Rally, I started thinking about the sport.
North Carolina?
And started thinking
throws
about,
you off, man.
It does. It does. I started thinking about the sport and just like how fascinating it is that there are like global racetracks that people just like go and race all over the world. And this is like a specific type of race, the rally, I guess. And I'm not too familiar with the rally, so remind me, what is a rally again?
You know, man, I really wasn't all that familiar with it as well, which is why I really just want to shout out this game. I think this game is $20. I think it's less if you can catch it on sale. I don't think it'll still be on sale by the time this episode comes out, but put it on your wish list, try and get it on sale. I think it's a $19.99 game. But like, you truly like, okay, so it starts off, you're in a car, you're in a desert, and you talk to a Buddha. So a Buddha comes down, and you're in this car in the desert. I kind of interpreted...
As games should start.
As games should start. All games should start. You should start in a car talking to Buddha.
Talking to divine consciousness.
Yes, divine consciousness at the end of time is kind of what it looks like. But in the Buddha kind of says, you know, the art of rally It's a celebration of the sport of rally, and you're in an alternate timeline where rally wasn't canceled. And it kind of says that the sport of rally went on, from the 1960s, through the end of the 90s, and it was canceled.
It's a short
or I guess
time.
the sport was kind of disbanded because it was so dangerous. And it kind of ends with trees are not your friends. But basically, the Buddha puts you in an alternate reality where you can experience all of rally at once. And in a rally, there are a couple of races. So like in the first one, there's 2 races. And so you do one racetrack in Norway that's paved and another racetrack in Norway that has like a snow, it's a snow road. So it's not pavement. And so you slide around and you fishtail, and it's kind of like being on like a dirt road. But basically you kind of do this winding track, and you have a start point, you have a finish point, and you just try and get the best time. And you're put up against other racers, and
Interesting.
you try and get the best time. And as you kind of move through it, like you do the national rally for each year, and as you go through it, you unlock more cars that were relevant in the time period, and they each have a little bio about them. And it has a bio about like the decade that you're racing in as well, and what happened in the sport of rally at the time. And I'm not a car guy at all in any sense of the word, but oh my god, this is just so fun to play, because like you're just driving around this like beautiful landscape. And they have a free roam mode, where so they basically just have like a fake landscape that's got 2 or 3 courses kind of mashed together, and you can just drive endlessly. You can just drive. There's no consequences. Like, it's just so chill, and you can just drive. So look up the art style, because I don't really know how to describe the art style of the Art of Rally. I'd love to hear what you think the art style is described as, because it's not really pixelated.
So one of the photos I see one of the first photos I see is like a drifting car with a ton of smoke behind it. I think I can kind of guess why the sport only lasted 3 decades.
Yeah, it's so fun to play this game, though. I mean, you live hot and fast, but...
So, rally cars are road legal and registered cars. I thought they might have been like racing cars. That's really interesting. So
that's kind of why it was also so popular, because you could see people just absolutely rip through these roads on these cars, and then you could go buy that car. So a lot of companies made rally cars because it was essentially like a sports car for races that anybody could buy.
I mean, yeah, people want to race, man. Even to this day, people race. It's just our competitive nature.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And cars can be really sick.
They're just really big toys, but that's also a reminder, that they're really dangerous too, right? These really big megatons, like they're tons of pounds. They weigh
tons, yeah. And an object in motion stays in motion. An object that weighs a ton,
We've talked about cars in the pod before.
Yeah, get a racing sim instead of a.
Yeah.
But what would you say this art style is?
The Art of Rally?
The Art of Rally, yeah.
As far as like the cover of the game, or like just in general?
Or just kind of like look at screenshots of the game.
This art style in the game. This is kind of like a boxy, like it was made in like a kind of a very public game engine.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it was. That's what I was gonna say. I thought it was like a Unity.
Yeah, like some.
Yeah, like a Unity type graphic.
But that's also.
It looks really pretty though.
Yeah, they definitely got the job done. It seems very, like it captures something, right? For lack of a better
word. Captures the essence of the cars. It captures the essence of landscapes. And
they're trying to really capture something. I think you really, by including that synopsis in the beginning, kind of hit the nail on the head, because just by looking at this, they captured the Art of Rally.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it is very... I mean, they've got tons of colors. It's incredibly... it's incredibly pretty.
Man, to be around in that time, dude, that's awesome.
And this is one that I would really recommend picking up on a handheld. I bet it would look so good on your OLED Switch.
I bet it would, yeah. It really would probably run super well.
Yeah, you should put this on your wish list, because I'm blown away by how much I've been enjoying it. Because a race only lasts like 3 to 5 minutes. So like if you've got 3 to 5 minutes to play your Switch or to play your handheld, you know, picking it up and doing a race like this, like it's just a no-brainer. I mean, it's so fun. I really enjoyed that. I think maybe we can talk more about that on a later episode, but give it a go.
Yeah, man. Thank you for putting me on. You stay putting me on to racing games.
Yeah. Maybe we play the new... What's that new one that came out? Need for Speed?
Need for Speed.
Maybe we play the new Need for Speed too.
Yeah, man.
All right, well, I think I'm about ready to end it up. What about you?
I'm about ready to call it for episode 67.
Yeah, great episode, man. I think it was a good one.
That was a good one.
All right, well, I guess, again, thank you so much to our patrons. We'll put a little announcement on our Patreon just thanking you all again. And if
Thank y'all.
if you'd like to support us, you know, you can support us for as little as $1 on the Patreon. And we probably won't use it for a year or two, but we'll use it eventually.
We'll get around to it.
Yeah, I mean, it really does help. But if you want to help us for free, for no cost to you, sharing it with a friend is the best way to help us out. If you have a friend that likes games, if you have a friend that's interested in Linux PCs or interested in games at all, we'd love it if you would share it with them. So I guess thank you so much for listening. This has been a great episode, Brandon.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sticky Buttons podcast, and tune on in to episode 68. We're going to have one hell of an episode coming to you guys. Just really appreciate all of you guys, appreciate all of our patrons, and anyone that checks out our TikTok, even the TikTokers, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a great one.
Peace in the streets.